The storm came without warning. One moment the plains beyond Ridge lay quiet under a pale winter sky. Then the wind rose like a living thing, howling across the land, dragging sheets of snow with it. By nightfall, the world had turned white and merciless. Most men had sense enough to stay indoors. Colt wasn't most men. He rode through the storm with his collar pulled high and his hat low, his horse struggling against the biting wind. The failed cattle run still weighed on him, but something deeper pressed at his chest tonight, an unease he couldn't name. That's when he saw it. A shape, half buried in snow near the old chapel at the edge of town. At first he thought it was debris, some torn cloth caught in the drift. But then the wind shifted and the shape moved. Colt pulled hard on the reins and dismounted in one fluid motion. "Easy now," he muttered to the horse, though his own pulse had begun to rise. He approached slowly, boots crunching against frozen ground. It was a woman. She lay curled into herself, her body stiff with cold, her dress soaked and clinging to her skin. White lace, once beautiful, now torn and stained with mud and frost. A bridal gown. For a moment, Colt just stared. Out here in a storm like this, no one ended up alone unless someone wanted them to be. He knelt beside her, brushing snow from her face. Her skin was pale as the snow itself, her lips cracked and blue. But she was breathing. Barely. "Hell," he whispered under his breath. Her fingers were clenched tight around something hidden beneath the folds of her dress, like she'd refused to let it go even as the cold tried to take her. Colt hesitated. This wasn't his problem. Nothing in Ridge ever came without a cost, and a woman left to die in a wedding dress. That kind of trouble didn't pass quietly. The wind howled louder, as if answering his thoughts. Colt exhaled sharply. "Yeah, all right." He slid his arms beneath her and lifted her carefully. She was lighter than he expected, fragile as if she might break apart in his hands. Her head fell against his shoulder, her breath faint against his neck. "Not today," he muttered. He carried her to his horse and rode hard for home. The cabin was small, but it held warmth. Colt set her near the fire, wrapping her in blankets, feeding the flames until the room glowed with heat. He worked in silence, methodical, like a man who had done this before, saving something broken, even if he didn't know why. Time passed. The storm raged outside, but inside the world shrank to the crackling of fire and the fragile rise and fall of her chest. Then, a sound, a weak breath that turned into a whisper. Colt looked up. Her eyes were open, dark, sharp, watching him. "You're alive," he said simply. She didn't answer right away. Her gaze moved slowly around the room, taking in every detail, the door, the windows, the fire, him. Finally, her voice came, thin and trembling. "Why?" Colt frowned. "Why what? Why did you save me?" It wasn't gratitude. It was suspicion. Colt leaned back slightly, studying her. "Didn't seem right to leave you out there." Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something more, but the words never came. Instead, she turned her face away. Silence filled the cabin again. Morning came slow and gray. The storm had passed, but its aftermath clung to the town like a curse. And the whispers began. Colt heard them before he even reached the saloon. "A bride, they say. Left right there at the altar. Ran her out in the storm." Belle's voice cut through the noise like a blade. She said loud enough for everyone to hear, "That's her name." Colt froze. "She was supposed to marry Baron last night," continued, her lips curling. "But something wasn't right. Folks say she brought bad luck, bad blood." A murmur spread through the room. "And," someone asked. His eyes gleamed. "He cast her out himself." Colt said nothing, but something inside him shifted. When he returned to the cabin, the door was open. His hand dropped to his gun instantly. He called. No answer. He stepped inside carefully and found her standing by the window. Watching, not running, waiting. "You shouldn't have left," she said without turning. Colt frowned, "Didn't figure you'd be up." Her voice dropped, barely above a whisper. "They'll come. A cold chill crept through the room, not from the weather but from something deeper. Colt's grip tightened. Who? For a moment, she said nothing. Then, the men who tried to bury me. Before Colt could respond, the distant sound of hoofbeats echoed through the frozen air. Slow, deliberate, coming closer, closed her eyes. They found me. The hoofbeats didn't rush. They approached slowly, deliberate, confident, like men who knew exactly what waited for them. Colt stepped out onto the porch, his boots crunching into the thin crust of ice. His hand rested low near his holster, not threatening, but ready. 3 riders emerged through the fatting mist. Dark coats, hard faces, rifles slung easy. Smen. They didn't greet him. Didn't need to. The one in front tilted his hat, just enough to reveal cold, familiar eyes. Morning. Colt didn't return the courtesy. You're a long way from town. The man smirked faintly, not far enough. A pause. Then his gaze shifted past Colt, toward the cabin. We're here for the girl. Inside stood frozen near the window, her breath shallow, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table. She didn't look surprised, only tired. Colt took a step forward, blocking the man's view. She ain't yours to take. A quiet tension snapped into place. The wind whispered between them. The rider's smile faded. Careful, you don't want to make this your problem. Colt's jaw tightened. Looks like it already is. For a moment, it felt like the world held its breath. Then, the rider exhaled sharply through his nose. Being generous, he said we could bring her back quiet. Colt didn't move. And if she doesn't go, he asked. The man's eyes hardened. Then we don't bring her back at all. Silence. Heavy, dangerous. Colt's fingers twitched near his gun. But he didn't draw. Not yet. He said slowly, if he wanted her so bad, he shouldn't have thrown her away. The words landed like a spark in dry grass. The men stiffened. For a second, it looked like blood would spill right there in the snow. Then the lead rider gave a short, humorless laugh. You always did have a death wish. He turned his horse sharply. But this ain't over. The other 2 followed. Their silhouettes faded back into the pale horizon. But their presence lingered. Like a promise, Colt didn't relax until they were gone. Even then, the tension didn't leave his shoulders. He stepped back inside. Hadn't moved. They'll come back, she said quietly. Colt shut the door behind him, figured as much. A pause. Then he looked at her, really looked this time. You gonna tell me why? His eyes flickered. For a moment, it seemed like she might lie again. Might hide behind silence. But something in her cracked. I wasn't rejected, she said. Her voice trembled, but the truth inside it didn't. I ran. Colt's brow furrowed. From what? She let out a slow breath, like the weight of it had been crushing her for too long. From him. The fire crackled louder in the quiet. He didn't want a wife, she continued. He wanted control. Her fingers tightened at her sides. Knew who I was the moment I arrived in Ridge. Colt stepped closer, and who's that? She hesitated, just long enough to make him understand. This wasn't small. My father, she began, her voice dropping, owned half this land before ever set foot here. Colt's eyes narrowed. That land been for years. Shook her head. No, it was stolen. The words hung in the air like smoke. He forced my father into a deal, she said. One that ended with a bullet when he refused. Colt's jaw tightened. You're saying murdered him. I'm saying, she whispered, he thought he got away with it. A long silence followed. Then Colt asked the question that mattered most. Why marry you? His lips pressed together. Because he never found what he was looking for. Colt's voice dropped. And what's that? She looked at him, straight into his eyes. For the first time, there was no fear, only truth. Proof. Before she could say more, a sharp crack shattered the window. Glass exploded inward. Colt moved instantly, grabbing her and pulling her down as a second shot tore through the wall behind them. Outside, shouts erupted. More riders. More guns. "They're not waiting anymore," Colt muttered. His heart pounded against his arm. Her voice barely held together. "If they find it, everything gone." Colt glanced at her sharply. "Find what?" She reached beneath her dress and pulled out a small, weathered document wrapped tightly in cloth. "Everything," she said. The cabin door burst open. Men flooded in. Guns raised. No hesitation. Colt fired first. The world erupted into chaos. Gunfire shattered the fragile silence of dawn. The cabin filled with smoke and splintering wood as Colt moved on instinct, fast, precise, unyielding. Each shot he fired wasn't just survival, it was a stand. A stand for a woman no one else had chosen. "Stay behind me," he shouted, but wasn't the same woman he had found in the snow. She didn't cower. She didn't break. She held the document tight against her chest, her fear burned away by something stronger, truth. The door burst open again. And this time, Baron stepped inside. Calm, unshaken, like a man who believed the world already belonged to him. "You've caused quite a storm," said his voice smooth as ice. Colt raised his gun. "Ends here." Smiled faintly. "No, it ends when she hands that over." His gaze locked onto. "Everything you are, everything you think you've won, it means nothing without proof." Silence fell. Heavy, final, then stepped forward. Slowly, deliberately. "You're wrong," she said. Her voice didn't tremble. She unfolded the document. Old ink, faded lines. But the truth inside it burned brighter than any fire. "My father didn't lose this land," she said, loud enough to carry beyond the broken walls. "It was stolen by you." Outside, townspeople had gathered, drawn by the gunfire, by the truth. Smile faltered. "Just for a second," he warned softly. But it was too late. She read every word aloud. Every lie. Every crime. Every acre taken with blood. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was breaking. Sheriff Wade stepped forward from the crowd. Slow, heavy, a man carrying the weight of everything he had ignored. "Is it true?" he asked. His hand twitched toward his gun, desperation flashing for the first time. But Colt was faster. One shot echoed across Ridge. And just like that, the man who owned the town didn't anymore. Snow began to fall again. Soft, quiet, cleansing. Days passed, and the town changed. Land returned to its rightful name. Voices once silenced began to rise. And she stayed, not as the bride no one wanted, but as the woman who reclaimed everything that was taken from her. One evening, beneath a sky finally at peace, she stood beside Colt. "Why did you save me?" she asked softly. Colt looked out over the land, then back at her, a faint smile touching his lips. "Because some things," he said, "are worth fighting for even when the whole world turns away." This time, the wind carried no fear, only freedom. Which city are you watching our channel from? Please leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.